I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots and a sex.
The biggest change is evident in TOPRAK's riding style. He no longer seems to be forcing the bike to conform to his riding style. Instead, Yamaha has begun building a bike that reflects the Superbike World Champion's natural character. The combination of the 850 cubic centimeters V4 engine and Pirelli tires allows TOPRAK to feel much more confident entering corners, braking deeply, and then opening the throttle much earlier than before. On numerous occasions, TOPRAK has admitted that the 850 cubic centimeters bike with Pirelli tires offers a much closer feel to a superbike than the Michelin-powered 1000 cubic centimeters MotoGP package. This is what has led to a complete change in lap times. Previously, Yamaha still lost significant time when accelerating out of corners slowly. But now, even though the 850 cubic centimeters engine produces less power than the 1000 cubic centimeters bike, the bike's character has become much easier to control. TOPRAK is able to maintain higher cornering speeds, making any loss of power on the straights more readily offset by technical speed. TOPRAK himself admits that the 850 cubic centimeters bike does feel slower on the straights, but tire grip and cornering confidence have improved significantly. What caught the eye most was the change in braking style. Since his World SBK days, TOPRAK was known as one of the riders with the best late braking technique in the world. This characteristic was difficult to implement during the early MotoGP season, due to the very different combination of the V4 engine and Michelin tires. But in this 850 cubic centimeters test, TOPRAK once again demonstrated his trademark style. He was able to brake very late, rev the bike faster, and then immediately open the throttle aggressively without losing stability. The atmosphere in the Yamaha garage had also changed completely. While a few months earlier there had been tension due to the V4 development not meeting expectations, this time optimism began to emerge. After each session, the engineers immediately gathered around the telemetry laptop to compare the data with the previous session. They found improvements in almost every section of the track. Not only was TOPRAK faster, but the way the bike produced lap times was also much more consistent. Although Yamaha has not released official lap times from this private test, various reports indicate a significant improvement in TOPRAK's performance compared to previous tests. This change reinforces confidence that Yamaha's project towards the 2027 MotoGP regulations is progressing in a positive direction. Here's the full news. TOPRAK Razgatlioglu once again had the entire MotoGP paddock buzzing. In a private test session on the 850 cubic centimeters Yamaha YZR-M1 V4 at the Ricardo Tormo circuit in Valencia, the Turkish rider demonstrated truly surprising progress. While in previous tests, TOPRAK had been seemingly searching for his rhythm, this time the situation changed almost 180 degrees. Every session showed a consistent increase in speed. Not just one or two fast laps, but almost all of his laps were at a very competitive pace. What surprised Yamaha's engineers most wasn't just the numbers on the stopwatch. They were even more impressed by how TOPRAK began to adapt to the new bike's character. Since Yamaha first decided to abandon the inline-4 engine philosophy and switch to a V4 configuration, their biggest challenge has been finding a balance between power, stability, and bike character that suited their riders. For months, the project experienced ups and downs. Many new components were tested. Everything from chassis design and geometry, to swing arm and weight distribution, to aerodynamics was constantly being revised. However, it was during the Valencia test that all these changes began to show tangible results. TOPRAK has been known from the start for his very different riding style compared to most MotoGP riders. In World SBK, he became legendary for his ability to brake late, a style that was nearly impossible for other riders. He could brake very late, maintain stability with the rear wheel slightly lifted, and then maintain high speed towards the corner apex. Such a technique was difficult to implement on previous generations of MotoGP bikes due to the aggressive nature of the Michelin tires and the 1000 cubic centimeters engine. But when Yamaha began developing the 850 cubic centimeters bike with Pirelli tires, many began to believe that this style would better suit TOPRAK's natural abilities. As soon as the first session began, the technicians immediately noticed something different. TOPRAK was no longer spending as much time in the pits as usual requesting setup changes. After a few warm-up laps, he immediately began gradually increasing his speed. Each time he returned to the garage, his comments became more specific. He no longer complained about a lack of grip or braking characteristics. Instead, he began requesting small details such as changes to front weight distribution, engine braking settings, and throttle response when exiting slow corners. For a rider, this type of change in input indicates one crucial factor. He's starting to feel comfortable with the bike. As the day progressed, his lap times continued to drop. Yamaha technicians monitoring the telemetry screens began to exchange glances. The previously significant time gaps were slowly disappearing. The minimum speed in almost all corners increased. This meant TOPRAK no longer needed to brake as long to turn the bike around. He was able to maintain momentum much better than in previous testing. In modern MotoGP, maintaining minimum corner speed is often more important than simply having the highest engine power. GPS data showed that TOPRAK was able to enter corners at higher speeds, then open the throttle earlier on corner exit. This combination compensated for the loss of power on the straights with significantly better times in the technical areas. This was one reason why his lap times improved so drastically. Interestingly, this performance change wasn't just due to the new engine. Yamaha also made major revisions to the chassis characteristics. The bike now felt more stable under hard braking. The front end offered much greater confidence. Meanwhile, the rear end became more composed during acceleration. TOPRAK is known as a rider who is very sensitive to rear wheel movement. He immediately feels the slightest loss of grip. This time, his comments were very positive. The engineers then began testing several additional setups. They slightly changed the swing arm pivot position, readjusted the weight distribution, and optimized the electronics to suit the characteristics of the Pirelli tires. The results again surprised everyone. Not only was a single fast lap achieved, but race simulations spanning dozens of laps showed very small time drops. This kind of consistency was what Yamaha had been seeking. Several sources in the paddock even reported that TOPRAK's race pace was far more competitive than the simulations Yamaha had conducted a few months earlier. This fueled optimism within the team. They believed the V4 project had finally been realized, entering a truly promising phase. For years, Yamaha has been known as a bike that's very strong in corners, but loses a lot of time on the straights. When they began developing the V4 engine, the primary goal was to improve acceleration without sacrificing agility. In the early stages, the opposite was true. The bike became more powerful but difficult to control. Now, it seems Yamaha is starting to find that balance. TOPRAK himself looked increasingly aggressive every time he exited the pit lane. He began trying different racing lines. Several times he braked very late, something he almost never did in early testing.